Hello and welcome to today's episode of Expedition Dogman. My name is Jamie and I'll be your host for this afternoon. This weekend we are at a paranormal conference in Warrington, so I thought I would give the presentation now so all you viewers can see it. So anyway, let's move on. I hope you can see the PowerPoint properly. Question: what is a werewolf? I'll set this to the audience participation part at this point.
It's something that howls at the moon, that changes on a full moon.
If there's anybody out there as well on the audience floor that would like to give their answers, if you give them now, I'll give you a few minutes. If you post up your comments, then that way we can see them. Right. Basically, a traditional werewolf transforms on a full moon. I don't know why I've wrote it twice, but yeah. We can clearly say it transforms on a full moon. Apparently, they howl at the moon. They appear in the myths and legends. And to go on to that, I've wrote some notes here. Everyone has a basic understanding of what a werewolf is. True werewolves are different in legends to the film and are the right source of entertainment. Now, in France, between the 1520s and the 1630s, werewolf hunts took place. 30,000 people killed for the crime of being a werewolf. Now, just to go on to this bit, it happened roughly around the same time as the witchcraft trials. The witchcraft trials and the werewolf trials were more or less simultaneous with each other. Now, described differently to the movies, can change 4 times bigger than a normal wolf and have a half human and half wolf appearance and no tail. Now, that is totally different to what a dogman is, but we'll get to that. Now, according to Hollywood, becoming a werewolf from a bite has no place in mythology for the simple fact that the werewolf would devour a human. Hello to Moonrider Fast. Hello and thank you for joining us. Anyway, let's move on. Now, as we all know, a werewolf in the films devours the people, so how can they bite them? Now, they got away with this with Scratch. Now, this idea, funnily enough, comes from Universal Studios in the film American Werewolf of London, and this took place in 1935, sorry. In modern culture, werewolves transform under a full moon. As you can see here, I know we can't see it brilliantly, it's camera problems, but yeah, transforms on a full moon. Whereas in legends, it's different. In legends, this is where we get onto the skinwalkers and all the different cryptids. But what if I told you they also walk around and run on their hind legs? What if I told you everything you believe, everything Hollywood has told you about werewolves is wrong? The Hollywood connection, now, we've sort of touched on this. As you can see, the American Werewolf of London. Hollywood, basically, I've gone through this in Werewolves Are Not What You Think in the actual video. If you go to my channel, I think it's the second video we ever did. I go into a lot more detail about this, but this is the basis of the talk. Right, so going back to that, Hollywood have got 2 and 2 and they've created 6. I know it's the mathematical way of talking about this, but it's exactly what they did. Why? Basically, what they've done is they've taken a cryptid creature and a scientifically proven mental disorder, which we will get to, and used it to create creatures of nightmares. They want to terrify you, basically. They're trying to program you to believe that these creatures don't exist, that they're man-made, but they're not. We'll get to that. Right, so the next theory as to exactly what it is, you've got clinical lycanthropy. Now, in the movies, you've got lycanthropy, especially in the films of Underworld, American Werewolf in London. Van Helsing also mentions about lycanthropy. But what is lycanthropy? People believe that lycanthropy is just to do with werewolves. That's it. The end. And that people physically transform into a wolf. Now, I'm sorry, but that is a load of codswallop. There is no way a physical human can transform. It's a trick of the mind. It's exactly what it is. Now, this is what skinwalkers look like. I don't know if you can see it properly. You might need to zoom your camera in. But that is what they say they look like. Now, as I just said, clinical lycanthropy is a rare mental disorder where the person afflicted truly believes they've turned into a werewolf, but don't physically change. Now, to go through this a bit more, people get affected by the full moon. It is proven facts that some people go crazy, some people feel drained, but the question is why? It's all to do with the mind. It's all to do with psychology, and that's exactly where it all stems from. Now, with clinical lycanthropy, you can Google this. If you've got another tab while you're watching this, Google it. It's absolutely fascinating what you can find. Type in the psychological disorder of clinical lycanthropy, and it goes into a lot more detail than what I've wrote here. It goes on to tell you about how people honestly believe that they have changed into a werewolf. They go through the physical change to a degree of the pain, of the action of the back, and of actually more or less physically transforming, but they don't physically transform. It's all to do with the mind. And this is the problem. This is where Hollywood are conning you. Now, I don't know how many of you know about this, but there was a case more or less 30 years back in France. It is on YouTube, or it used to be. I don't know if people have taken it down, where it shows you the footage of what happens to a person that is actually afflicted with lycanthropy. There is many more examples on YouTube. If you just type into YouTube when you finish watching this, clinical lycanthropy, the truth is out there, but the question is, why is it not advertised more? It's simple. It all boils down to the government. Now, if you check out my channel as well, I go into a lot more detail about the government cover-up, which I don't have time to talk about today. But we could do that in a future live broadcast if you wish. But to move it on a little bit more, let's look at the cryptid creature that we all know this channel is about. This is the cryptid creature that Hollywood know about, that the governments know about. I'll go into a lot of detail about this. I've covered a lot of videos already. But anyway, moving on. The dogman is a cryptid creature which, as we all know, is roughly on 7 foot tall, very hairy. As eyes generally, there is different reports circulating about different eye colours. Some people are seeing red ones, some people are seeing amber, some are seeing blue. These seem to be the main 3 colours of what people are actually seeing. But anyway, it has different forms. The type 3, which is your more canine, which if you look at a traditional werewolf that Hollywood have created, this is where they got their imagery from. This is where the original werewolf stemmed. Whereas the type 9 is more humanoid in appearance. Now, there is a lot more types about this. Within the next few weeks, I'm going to do a video on the different types of dogman, because you've got ones that look like jackals, you've got ones that look like hyenas, you've got your canines, you've got your humanoid types. Now, these creatures are very aggressive. They are very territorial in nature. They have nesting spots. They have patterns of where they migrate from. Now, quite a few are probably from over the States. In the Americas, they start off in Mexico and they work their way up to Canada. And these things can kill humans. Many people think that we are the only apex predators out there, that we are the top of the food chain. We're not. This is very important to understand. They like to play sadistic games on people who go into their territory. They do. Not all the time will they try to kill you, Sometimes they will try to scare you, and they get a lot of enjoyment out of doing this. They love to terrify people. For some strange reason, they do. This is a picture, I hope you can see it, of what one looks like when it stood up. You've got the pointy ears, you've got the claws down here, you've got the legs. This is it in its upright form. Now, I'm just going to play a video, bear with. This is one of the videos that's on my channel where it shows you. You can actually do this on Google Maps, but the problem with Google Maps is occasionally they switch this off. They have a tendency to alterate things. Sometimes they want the truth to be known, other times they don't. I do think Hollywood, Google, all the governments of the world, they're all in on this. You'll understand why, bear with.
Hello, and welcome to Expedition Dogman. Something I'd like to show you on Google Maps. I found this quite interesting here when I found it. It shows most locations of where I'm going to do
Bear with.
I'll show you how to do it so you can do this for yourself. We go here to Google Maps, play this out. If we type in, I've already searched this one, so I'm going to do it again. And click search. This shows in the UK, here, how many encounters we've had, how many have been logged. We scroll out, and if you look, this is Europe. Further into Eastern Asia. Australia, I'm surprised it's actually been over here, but still, if we scroll over to the other side of the world, look at America. And this you can easily do for yourself. I hope you found this little informative video really interesting. And it just goes to show how old wrong can we? Until next time, goodbye.
There you go with that video. Jen Meehan, is it? You just commented. You've said, I tried to do this a while ago after one of your videos and couldn't get it to work. Yeah, there's a reason for that, and I was just explaining it. Google is very temperamental. Google is run by the American government. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the government side of it on this video, well, on this live stream, but the CIA, all the governments of America, they know about this. And as we all know, bear with me, the governments know about this. All the governments of the world, especially America, know that people are physically looking for the dogman, but they're hiding it. So the question is why? But anyway, let's move on. I'm actually from the UK myself, and in my hometown of Hull, we have something known as the Beast of Barnston Drain. And if you Google, the Beast of Barnston Drain is also known as the Old Stinker. This is the region where he's been spotted, and to me, this guy's a dogman. You'll understand why when I go into it. If you look here, you've got the amber eyes. Quite interesting how the whole Daily Mail did the imagery for this, but it sort of gives you a clue as to what this beast is. Right, I'll read through what I've written so far about this. In Hull, East Yorkshire, United Kingdom, in September 2016, numerous reports of a wolf-like creature surfaced in the Hull Daily Mail surrounding Barnston Drain. The locals have nicknamed the creature Old Stinker. Now, in Hull, we all know about the Old Stinker. We get told to keep away from the drain. It runs from roughly Bransholm area up to Beverley and out towards the actual place called Barnston. One couple reported seeing the creature near the drain just outside Beverley. We've actually been there. If you watch the video, Hunt for Old Stinker, we actually go to the location, more or less, where this thing was spotted. And it was eating a German Shepherd. When it spotted the couple, it picked up the dog in its mouth and rose to its hind legs, and it vaulted over the drain. Now, bearing in mind, The drain is roughly about 7 foot long. Well, width-wise, it's about 7 foot. Another eyewitness reported seeing something similar, and when it spotted her, it vaulted over the drain and disappeared into an industrial estate. Now, as we all know, wherever you find one dogman, you can bet your bottom dollar there is more around. These things do not live on their own. They live in clans. Right, so what is the Beast of Bamston Drain? Now, I have my theory as to what it actually is, but we'll get to that. Right, was it a hoax? Possibly. But saying that, how would a human be able or sick enough to carry a dead German Shepherd? You know the size of the German Shepherds. They're quite big, they weigh a lot. In its mouth and vault over a drain, and then it actually scaled a 7-foot fence. I highly doubt it. Because if you look at the weight of our jaws, the stature of a person, there is no way we can carry a dead carcass in our mouth and vault a drain. I don't think that's it at all. Many people are saying, oh, it's false. No, it's not. Right. Is it a spectre? 1 minute for that. Is it a spectre? Wolves have been extinct in the UK since the 1500s. Possibly it could be a spectre of a time long since gone. But how can you explain it eating a physical dog? Now, there's 2 theories to this. We can go at this with a 2-pronged approach. Yes, it possibly could be a spectre. This is how it's vanishing. Is it a case the mind's playing a trick and they're seeing it eating a spirit dog, where it's the carcass, and all they're seeing is like a residual tapes? As we know, with many things, you've got residual hauntings. Is this a residual haunting that's verging on the intelligent? It's possible, but to see it physically eating, and apparently they saw all the blood coming from this creature's mouth, I don't think it's that. There's a niggling doubt as it to being a spectre. Now, it gives more credit to my final theory, because as we know, wolves have not lived in the UK since the 1500s. We have no wolves. So for people to be seeing a wolf-like creature, it really does ring the alarm bells. Was it a big cat? Highly doubtful, for the simple reason this thing was clearly walking and running on its hind legs, just like a werewolf, right? But as we know, werewolves are not what you think, and this is where people believe it's werewolf, but how can it be? As we know, according to the traditional programming, werewolves only transform on a full moon. These events, from what we've worked out through looking at maps, talking to people, these events did not happen on a full moon. It was evening, so the moon as well wasn't even out. And they're seeing a wolf-like creature that's walking around on its hind legs, not a werewolf. Now we get to the big reveal of what this the Beast of Bamston Drain truly is, and what I believe it is. I've also spoke to other local cryptozoologists, and we're all in the same mind. We're all thinking exactly the same thing as to what this creature is. Now, leading to my final theory, and the one that holds up the most weight, according to, like I mentioned, what the eyewitnesses have said, also the fact it was a spike in activity, and they were water source. That's an interesting point to look at to begin with. Usually, where you find dogmen, if it's a nesting site, you're going to get lots of spikes. If it's dogmen that are passing through, or it's a rogue dogman, you're going to get a spike. Because locally around here, we have also something known as the Flixton werewolf. That's what the locals call it, which is up near Bridlington. So you've also got the Flixton werewolf, which covers a lot of the Yorkshire Wolds. I'll pull that up shortly, but you've got the Yorkshire Wolds. So how can one dogman be covering all this region? They're not. There is, I do believe, a clan of them, or a pack, whatever you want to call them, that is living in this area. Since writing my synopsis even 2 years ago, I've looked deeper into this and with a friend gone looking for the creature. What we uncovered was unbelievable. We heard strange howls, horses speaking for no reason. And when I sent the footage for analysis, I actually sent it to a guy called Lieutenant from America. And what came back was incredible. And it gives more proof that the old stinker, it's not a werewolf, it's in fact a dogman. For some reason, dogmen, they love the trees. They love to live within the tree system. And they have a similar ability to Bigfoot, where they can blend into their environment and bend light around them. Now, if you look at the Beast of Bray Road, people have been trying to get images of that for years, and all they're getting is mist. Why? Well, we've covered the Native American connection on this channel, how they believe it guards cemeteries. Now, if you look at the Beast of Bray Road, it's always been spotted where there's Native American cemeteries. It's a guardian. Now, with Bigfoot, they have a weird flair. We cannot truly understand what it is because nobody's physically proven this, but there is actually advancements within the cryptozoologist world where people are getting closer to the answer. But from what we do know, their flair bends light around them. It's like a camouflage. If you look at the film Predator, now I did do a video called Dogman the Real Life Predator. Now, in the film Predator, this creature camouflages itself or does it? No. Something to do with its technology bends light around it. Now, Bigfoot can do it, and I don't see any reason, I haven't seen any proof that begs to differ, that dogmen can do exactly the same thing. And this is why we're not getting clear images. And you see it all over the Facebook groups of, well, this isn't true. All I'm seeing is trees. Yeah, you will be seeing trees. For the simple fact, these creatures have a habit of hiding. They love to get the high ground. Now, as we know, these creatures are an apex predator. And what do predators always do? They get the view of the surroundings. Where's the best place for that? In the woods. You certainly don't want to be on the ground. You'd go up in the trees. Bigfoot do it in America. Their national parks are full of them. Now, this is what we're spotted in Barmston Drain. If you look right up to where the arrow is, here, that is Beast of Barmston Drain. Who's watching us? Right, so if we look at more dogman sightings and cases, there again, there's the UK on its own. We have quite a lot, but I do think there is certain clans. How they got here, how they're travelling the world, there is different theories. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine from Texas, Dave from Texas. Shout out to you, my friend. There is some of your images in this PowerPoint, so I'm giving you a shout out now before we get to there. But there's different theories as to how these creatures are travelling. Because if you look at the UK, bear with, there is water all the way around. There is no bridges anywhere that connects Ireland to mainland UK, UK to Europe. There is no bridges anywhere. So the question is, how are they travelling? What's the first theory is that during the Ice Age, they walked across the sheets in the north and travelled down, which would suggest that these creatures have been here for years, that they go back way back tens of thousands of years ago. Now, in a previous live stream, we was talking to a guy called Cisco, and he mentioned how these creatures were here at the beginning of time. Now, this goes back to something when we was looking at what a dogman is. I think we're going to come on to the traits and behaviours shortly, so I will come back to that thought in a few minutes. Now, the other theory, I need to do a lot of digging on this, but it's called the inner earth theory. Now, America, England, and most countries in the world have a lot of cave systems, and we don't fully know how deep these caves are actually going. And there's a theory that they're going into the caves, walking down to the middle of the earth, well, more or less middle of the air and coming back up the other end into different countries. Now, I don't fully believe this theory for the simple fact the deeper down the earth you go, the hotter it gets. Now, as we know, the dogman is a very fiery creature. As you know, humans, when we get into the hot sun, we boil, we sweat. We can't last very long in there. Now, as we go to the centre of the earth, it's very much like going to the sun because you've got all the molten lava, and the deeper you go, the hotter it's going to get. How are they lasting down there so long? If that is the case of how they're doing this, how long can they stay down there before they have to resurface somewhere? I don't believe that's the theory that surrounds them at all. Is it a case then that these are spiritual creatures and they're turning into orbs, mists, vanishing and reappearing somewhere? Out in the field, it is very difficult to gauge how they're doing this. Well, let's look at some sightings anyway. Right. First of all, you got the beast of the LBL, Land Between the Lakes, as it's better known by. I'm going to be doing videos on all three of these shortly, and these are going to be very long. Well, obviously the videos themselves won't be long, but the series on them will be long because we're going to look into a lot of it. The Beast of Bray Road is a singular dogman. I think he's a rogue, unless there is others around. The Beast of the LBL, which is Land Between the Lakes, I believe that is a nesting point for them. The Michigan Dogman, is it one or is there more? Who knows? Now, anyway, moving on. Dogman spotted near Humberside Airport. Now, if you look there, you've got the H, well, the housey button. Just a bit below that, you've got Humberside Airport. Now, going back a few years back, these guys were travelling home from Humberside Airport to Grimsby in the middle of the night. Now, you've got a main road that runs past Humberside Airport. One side, obviously, you've got the airport. On the other side, you've got a farm, which, there you go, you've got a food source. You've got shelter, because you've got all the bands. A bit beyond there is a reservoir. There you go, there's a water source. Now, apparently, they saw a big black shadowy figure, roughly about 7 foot, running across. They didn't see the eye shine because this thing just moved ridiculously fast. And it didn't jump over the bushes, it ran straight through them and through the other side. So they left it and they went back the following day. And they could physically see, I actually spoke to these guys, and they said the bushes were physically down as though something massive had gone through. Is it a case then that the Flixton werewolf or the Beast of Anderson Drain is expanding territories, or is it a different clan? Right, so we're going to go now more into the behaviours and the traits of the dogman. Right, there's the nice image of the dogman again. Right, first of all, these creatures are often spotted not only in the countryside but also in urban areas, and will eat pets and wild animals alike. That is very true. This is where we go back to what I was talking about. We think we're the top of the food chain. We're not. We are not apex predators. There is creatures out there that will eat us, our pets, and any wild animals. The dogman is one such creature. But the question is, why are they coming into the cities? Why are we getting more sightings nowadays in built-up areas? You can look at the Michigan Dogman as a prime example of this. It's because we're expanding into their territory. It goes back to the theory of, I've mentioned this countless times on this channel, the Dogman and Bigfoot are the original creatures of this planet. It goes into the theory of the Anunnaki. I'll talk about this once we get to the bottom. But going on to what we're talking about with the urban areas, we're expanding into their woods. Every country in the world is doing this. I know it sounds like I'm preaching save the planet, but I'm not. They have territory, and the more we're building into it, we're sort of taking their natural environment away from them, which is forcing them to be spotted more within the city. Right, number two, most sightings are near running water sources, which suggests these creatures are actual living beings. I've mentioned this before. I truly, honestly believe that these creatures are real flesh and blood. How they're transforming into mist on the camera, I'm not sure. If there's anybody in the comments who's watching who knows about this, please do say, and we'll get to it. Right. They give off negative feelings and a sense of dread. The nameless dread can be associated with them. I did do a video a couple of months back on this subject. So you've got the nameless dread. You literally, I know it sounds weird calling it the nameless dread, but you can't put a finger on it. You know when you're walking down the street and you get this impending doom, but you can't put a finger on it? That's exactly what the nameless dread is. Now, when a dogman is nearby, for some reason, they have a sense of foreboding around them. The entire area will just go quiet. You won't hear birds, you won't hear anything. Because literally, it's as though the whole of nature goes still. This is due to the feeling of what they're doing. It's to do with their apex predator essence, so to speak. Now, they are attracted to the smell of tobacco and musky aftershaves, deodorants, etc. Now, this is what I believe happened in the LBL. As we know, I think it goes back to the 70s, if I remember rightly. A group of, well, it was a family of, I can't remember what they called it. It's that weird group that lives in nature. I'll come to you in a minute, unknown. Bear with. Right. Anyway, going back to the LBL, it's the Hamish, sorry. Yeah, it was a group of Hamish family that moved to the LBL. They gave up on the Hamish community. Now, I don't believe the Rogers story, but we will talk about this at another time. They decided to go camping in the LBL. And they didn't smoke tobacco. Tobacco didn't really have much to do with what happened to them. It was what the woman was wearing. She was wearing a perfume that gave off this feminine attraction. And as we know, the LBL is a nesting site for dogman. It's it's one of their breeding grounds within America. And this is what attracted the beast of the LBL to them. But there's different stories saying that it was more than one dogman that attacked them, that there was others lurking in the background. But moving on, he destroyed the husband. He literally had his head taken clean off. The son was brutally slaughtered, and also, bear with me on that, I'll get to you. And also, the son was brutally slaughtered. I don't understand how he managed to kill the woman, but he ripped off the door, left it hanging off its hinges, got in, brutally murdered her. Now, according to the Rogers story, it wasn't the girl who died, it was the beast. I don't believe it was, because why would bits of her body be found hiding in a tree? How would it get up there, for one? And bits of her clothes hanging down. I believe in the original police story that's on YouTube as to what's really happened in the LBL. Now, we've just moved on to breeding, quite literally. They can breed in living clans. As we know, and there's countless reports coming out about this one, that it's not the dogman you see that you need to worry about. It's all the rest of them. Because like a typical wolf, they live in packs, they live in clans. And when they hunt as one. It's not the one you see that you need to worry about. It's the rest of them. It's typical wolfish behaviour. And we were just talking about this. If you see one, it's not the one you see that you need to be worried about. It's the potential of others around that are not revealing themselves. This is exactly typical dogman behaviour. We're going to what Unknown's saying. Parasites, ancient parasites. Cain was said to be the first vampire or werewolf. We're not talking about vampires. The mark of the beast, caning teeth, cane, dogs, or werewolves. I believe in it being more the dog theory, because if you look in the Bible, there is stories of giant dogs. Apparently, Saint Christopher himself was a giant dog, and that he was only granted human appearance. You've got to view this. There is no mention of them being werewolves. These are mentioned as dog-headed creatures. Romania, yes, you are right, is a lot to do with the vampire side of it, but my views on vampires is very varied. That is a massive subject in its own, and it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight, unfortunately. In Romania, they still call these Rogerus or werewolves Dragos. Never heard of that one, to be honest with you. Now, Romania is next door to Transylvania, and I think what you're getting at is what we're talking about, how werewolves are not what you think. You're looking at it, I don't need to be disrespectful by saying this, but you're looking at it through the Hollywood, what you've read type scenario, rather than what a werewolf truly is. I don't know how long you've been listening, but we'll go back to it. Clinical lycanthropy, look up that one. Right, go back. So we've got different images here. Now, dude from Texas, massive shout out, dude, thank you. Look here, you've got the amber eyes. You've got the tree line running down. If you look at my video, Dogman Evidence, you'll see it a lot easier. It's a lot easier to see than the way we've got this set up. I will roll the clip. And I'll be back with you in a second. Bear with. Right, as you can see through these images, there is a lot of tree line. Now, when people post these in Facebook groups, you get a lot of, oh, well, this is just trees we're looking at. No, it's not. It goes back to what I was saying earlier on in this talk about the bending of the light. Now, you would have thought there was a lot known about vampires. I hate to bring these creatures up, but there is a lot known about vampires. There's a lot known about witchcraft, etc., etc. Why is very little known about dogmen? Right, let's go on to this. Very little is known about the dogman because people who've seen them, pardon me, people who've seen them are in denial and never want to talk about it again, whilst others are too scared to come forward due to the fact they are scared and they won't be believed, or they'll in fact be ridiculed about this. There is a lot of ridiculing. It's not just in the cryptozoologist field, but in the paranormal. Some people are very close-minded. Also, from the dogman, let's look at this as well from the dogman point of view. Why would it reveal itself to the masses? Because in our day and age, hunters would hunt it for sport and force it to be extinct. And also in some countries like America, they are far too trigger happy and wouldn't allow research to happen. That is why I believe these things prefer to stay in the mythology of the human race. But the trouble is, I believe these creatures are very much real. And yes, they are. Because if you look at all the reports, there is lots of similarities. So let's take this paragraph. Thank you, Unknown. I respect your opinion as well. Anyway, let's move on. Little is known of the dogman because most people who've seen them are in denial and never want to talk about it again. This is where we're bringing it back full circle. We now start to look at the psychological side of the human brain. Now, I'll try to dumb this down the best I can, but I can't promise. Now, the human brain has two modes, fight or flight. Now, if you was walking down the street and you saw a very big hairy creature that looks like a wolf walking down the road, you'd either want to fight it or your brain would go, oh, fuck, let's get out of here. And these creatures have a tendency of causing nightmares to continue. Now, people don't also share the stories with other people because in some communities, they're all well known. And there's actually reports, if you look at Dogman Encounters Radio, there's reports on there where these communities are very close and they don't believe in this side of it. So when dogmen are actually showing up, they won't tell the family and friends because they'll go, oh, don't be silly, that creature doesn't truly exist. And this is why not much is known, because unfortunately, people are not coming forward and we need more people to come forward. It is vitally important, especially for those of us out here who are trying to research these creatures and get more of an understanding as to what's actually happening. Anyway, moving forward, when we look at this from a dogman point of view, it's exactly the same with Bigfoot. Now, you've got to understand Bigfoot dogmen, they've all been here roughly around the same time as each other. It goes back to the Anunnaki. It goes back to the creation of the human race. If you look in the Bible at the word Elohim, now in the Jewish Bible, it's a lot more clearer. Elohim is actually plural. In the modern day Bible, it says, God created man in his image. If you look at the original translation of this, it says, God made man in our, let's make man in our image. There's more than one God. And if you look at the religions of the world, but I've actually done a video on this. And the Charles Darwin evolution theory states that we come from bacteria all the way up to the air. But if you look at an actual image of it, unfortunately, I haven't got one on here. But there's a gap missing. And I do believe that the dogman and the Bigfoot was here first. And that their DNA was spliced with our DNA, with the DNA of the Anunnaki, to create mankind. That's a quick rundown of it. But there's a reason why these dogmen will not reveal themselves to the masses. And it's more or less an American problem. Because all over the world, people can be just as bad, don't get me wrong. But in America, I've read numerous reports where they've gone, oh, I'm so-and-so. Tell me who you are before I shoot you. Now, the dogman doesn't talk physically to people. Not through physical talking, it's telepathical. So if you're going, I don't know, I'm Joe Bloggs, give me your name before I shoot you. What happens? You get shot. Especially if you're a dogman. And if you look at episode 1 of Dogman Encounters Radio, there is a prime example of this. And this is the problem, I think, it's not just with America, but the entire human race is just as bad. We're not in a position to ask questions, shoot later. We're at the moment still in that position of, let's shoot first, then ask questions about this. And this is why research can't truly happen. And for those of us going out into the field, it is very difficult to get the information we're seeking. But hopefully we will get there. We're just going to have to keep persisting. And this is why I believe they try to stay in the mythology. They try to stay in the shadows the best they can. Right, so let's revisit the Hollywood connection. There in the top left, imagery of what apparently these werewolves look like. Earlier on, I did mention how Hollywood have put 2 and 2 together and come up with 6. Well, yes, they have. They've taken a real cryptid and a real scientific mental disorder in order to create a creature of terror. Like I mentioned before, it goes back to 1935 when they first released The American Werewolf of London. And this is where, moving forward into modern day, the modern ideas of what a werewolf is come from. Make no mistake, these creatures are very rare and they are out there. Who knows? You might just encounter one. If you go looking for these creatures, whatever you do, don't go alone. If you go into the woods on your own to look for these creatures, it could be very dangerous. Let's look at this through simple country code facts. If you're looking for these creatures, go in pairs. Because what if you had an accident? I'm not saying if you get attacked by one of these things, you might not find one. What about if you fall? Anything like that, it goes back to sensible safety. Always go in pairs. Never go alone. And just before we do go, just be very careful. Because these creatures can be hiding anywhere. You don't just have to go to the woodlands, by the way, to find them. They could be out in the countryside. They could be in the city. You could literally just run into one on your way home tonight. It is not being unheard of. There is reports out there. Do check out my videos on this, by the way. Let's go forward. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. That's all we've got. For more on this topic, please do visit my main YouTube channel. There is more content. It worked this weekend as I'm at a conference, but hopefully I'll be able to get also the video for the channel. So then you've got this live stream, but then hopefully we might be able to get the actual footage. So yes, please do check out any of the work. If you haven't liked and subscribed, look, I'm not going to preach on about this too long, but YouTube at the moment has dropped the community tab down to 500 subscribers. That is the aim by July, but I know we can beat it before then. So if you like this content, if you like the content on the channel as well, please do subscribe. I would appreciate it very much. Now, as to what we've been talking about tonight, does anybody have any questions? Anybody at all has any questions, please do ask. Lloyd, have you got any questions?
I don't at the moment, thank you.
Right. Anybody out there in the YouTube audience got any questions before we wrap things up? Give you a few minutes. No, well, if that's everything, I thank you for tuning in. And just remember, friends, do be aware of the howl. Goodbye.